unfold.
One of the biggest fears we all have about getting older is that our minds are just destined to decline. But what if that whole idea, that entire belief, is built on a giant scientific mistake? For almost 100 years, the answer from science was a pretty firm yes. The thinking was, you hit a certain age in your youth, and that's it. Your brain's hardware gets locked in. From there, the only way is down. And this idea came right from the top. This quote from the father of modern neurology, Santiago Ramon y Cajal, became known as the harsh decree. And man, it cast a long shadow. It created this deep-seated fear in our culture that, for adults, it was just biologically too late to really change, to learn new things, to grow.
But here's the incredible part. That foundational belief, it was just completely wrong. See, there's been this quiet scientific revolution bubbling under the surface, and it doesn't just question that old dogma, it completely shatters it.
So, what's the big shift? It's this. Your brain is not a machine that wears out. It's not a computer. It's a living, breathing, dynamic tissue. And the new reality, the new name of the game, is neuroplasticity. It's this mind-blowing idea that our brains are constantly, and I mean constantly, rewiring themselves based on what we do, what we experience, and what we think, right up until the very end.
Now, this whole revolution didn't happen overnight. It was pushed forward by some maverick pioneers. Take Michael Merzenich. He was the one who proved that the brain's internal maps, how it represents the world, aren't fixed at all. I love his analogy for it. He said to think of the brain like a floodplain. Our experiences, our thoughts, our actions, they're like rivers of water that literally carve new channels into that landscape.
And then came a discovery that was, honestly, scientific heresy at the time. A researcher named Fred Gage proved the impossible, that adult brains can actually grow entirely new neurons. The process is called neurogenesis. And get this, one of the most powerful triggers he found? Simple physical exercise.
Okay, so that's in the lab, but what about in real people out in the world? Well, the most stunning proof came from the crazy busy streets of London. See, to become a London cabbie, you have to pass one of the most brutal memory tests on Earth. It's called, simply, the knowledge. So researchers got curious. They scanned their brains and compared them to London bus drivers who just follow the same fixed routes every day. And what they found was just amazing. The taxi drivers, the ones who spent years learning and actively navigating this massive city, had physically grown the part of their brain that handles spatial memory, the posterior hippocampus. It's just a perfect real-world example of how intense, focused mental effort literally changes the physical structure of your brain. All right, so this is the crucial takeaway so far. We know the brain can change. That right there is the biological hope. So the next big question is, how? How do we actually do it? How do we trigger that growth? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is a protein called BDNF, which stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor, but you don't need to remember that. Just think of it like Miracle-Gro for your brain. It's basically a fertilizer that helps your brain cells grow and stay healthy. And here's the best part. You don't need some fancy prescription to get more of it. The things that boost BDNF are actually pretty simple, natural things. Aerobic exercise, that's probably the most powerful trigger we know of, but also novelty. Just breaking your routine, exploring a new part of town, or trying to learn a skill that you are totally terrible at. So, all this growth and new connection making, how does it stick? Well, it gets locked in through a process called long-term potentiation, or LTP for short. It's the physical basis for learning, and it's perfectly summed up in that famous saying, neurons that fire together, wire together. Every single time you practice something with real focus, you're physically making the pathway between those brain cells stronger. You're paving a highway in your head. So, okay, how do we put all this together into a real strategy? Well, experts like neuroscientist Andrew Huberman have boiled all this science down into a really clear 5-step protocol for learning. First, you got to get alert and focused. Then, and this is so important, you have to embrace making mistakes. That feeling of frustration, that's not a sign you should stop. That's the biological signal telling your brain, hey, pay attention, time to rewire. After that, it's all about letting it sink in, taking short breaks, and most importantly, getting deep restorative sleep. That's when the real construction work happens.
And this isn't just some abstract theory from a lab. We can actually see this science in action, embodied by real people who are living proof of this incredible potential.
Let me introduce you to the superagers. It's a term from scientists at Northwestern University for this incredible group of people. We're talking about folks in their 80s, even 90s, who have the memory and mental sharpness of people 30 years younger. They are completely defying what we thought was the normal timeline for aging.
And this isn't just about how they feel or how well they do on tests. Their brains are physically measurably different. They actually lose brain volume at less than half the rate of their peers. So what's their secret? Well, it seems to come down to a life filled with challenge. Always learning new things, pushing themselves mentally, and staying deeply engaged with other people. They didn't just get lucky, they built a more resilient brain over time.
And the potential for this kind of learning at any age it's beautifully illustrated by people like Priscilla Sitiané. At 90 years old, she decided she wanted to learn how to read. So what did she do? She enrolled in elementary school and sat in a classroom right alongside her great-great-grandchildren. And you know what? She did it.
Or how about John Lowe? At 80 years old, he decided to take up classical ballet. Think about that. He trained for years, and by age 88, he was performing professionally as a soloist. It's just incredible proof that your brain can learn and master these incredibly complex physical skills at literally any age. Okay, so let's bring this all home. What does all this science, all these stories, what does it mean for you and me? Well, it all points to a really powerful conclusion about our own lives and our own potential. If there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. Our fear of getting older, of losing our edge, it often pushes us to do the exact wrong thing. We think we should rest, take it easy, disengage. But the biology tells us the complete opposite. The science is crystal clear. The struggle is the medicine. Pushing yourself, doing things you're bad at, embracing that feeling of effort, that is the most effective way to keep your brain young and vital. So that harsh decree from a century ago, it's been completely overturned. The door to growth, to learning, to changing your own mind, it never really locks. The biological hope is absolutely real, and now the science has given us the user manual. So the only question left really is for you. Your brain is waiting. What will you choose to build?